5 minutes. So we're going to start with Ellen from the Sanborn Regional School District.
Would it be okay if the four of us come together?
Sure. Just if you could identify yourselves.
Sure. Stand up. Exercise. Hi, my name is Ellen Howard. I'm from the Sanborn Regional School District. I'm the Director of Curriculum, and Sanborn is one of the PACE districts. And I know it's a short public comment today, but the four of us wanted to just take a moment to give you just a quick bird's eye view of our district and our reason for being part of PACE. First, I want to thank the board for the support of an initiative that allows a district like Sanborn to keep its identity and its local integrity, as well as giving us the honor to hold ourselves accountable. And that has been a huge transformation for our district to give us that responsibility back.
I want to echo Ellen's thanks to the board and to the commissioner for their support and for their ongoing support of PACE. I'm Michael Chernow. I'm the assistant principal and curriculum director for Sanborn Regional High School. And I want to talk just very briefly about what that support has meant for our district in terms of transforming our practice. We started about 9 years ago on a journey to become a competency-based system, and PACE came along at just the right time for us. We were at our developmental stage where we were ready to begin exploring the construction of high-quality performance assessments. We had participated in some professional development, and PACE came along and allowed us to sort of springboard to that next level in our development as a district. As a consequence of our competency-based movement and PACE coming along when it did, we have been able to use that as a vehicle to transform virtually every aspect of our district. The way that teachers organize themselves in professional learning communities, the structures that we put in place in all of our buildings for intervention for students who are struggling and can't meet these higher standards, for students who are ready to meet the standard today who need to be challenged in some new way with enrichment or honors experiences or at the high school early college experiences. We've taken this opportunity to redefine what it is that we do at the school in the district level, and it wouldn't simply be possible without your ongoing support for competency-based learning and for PACE. So thank you for your support.
I'm Debbie Forth. I'm the principal of the Beatty Elementary School in the Sanborn School District, and I think what I'd like you to know about PACE is how it has changed the conversation. So the PACE work is much more than just an assessment. An assessment is the end piece of how our students are doing, but the process of creating these assessments has been so powerful. Our teachers feel that these assessments are authentic, that they're actually tied to instruction, and they actually measure what children are learning. And because of that, the conversation among the staff is unbelievable. When you take a group of teachers, you put them together, and you give them an opportunity to really look at student work, really look at what these assessments mean, and really have the time to pull information from that about where instruction needs to go, the end result is really powerful. So I can't stress enough what a positive impact it's had on our whole learning community.
Thanks, Beth.
Hi, good morning. My name is Laura Tebow, and I'm a parent in the district. So my family and my children are the beneficiaries of all of this hard work. And I just wanted to bring to the conversation just to try to illuminate what all of this PACE means by maybe just sharing a couple of stories. So I have a third grader at E.J. Beatty Elementary School in the Sanborn district. And not unique to my child, but he has a very different approach to learning. I have two children, so I've seen two different experiences of how kids approach learning, and I understand that all children have their own way of approaching, but I think I can confidently say with my younger son, he definitely marches to his own tune. He doesn't particularly care for school. He's very introverted, and he sometimes is challenged by anxiety and some sensory issues. So what I wanted to bring to the conversation is how my two children, who are so different, have both not only just been so supported by this district, but inspired. And I can just give you a couple of stories. So my third grader when we talk about mastering content, which we hear a lot about in PACE, what does that actually mean? So my son right now is working on his biography project of Jane Goodall. He chose Jane because he's absolutely in love with animals. And throughout his time at Bakey, each of his teachers have recognized this and have helped him to direct his learning so that he can use that passion. And so this is just one example, another example of how they have gently, helped him to find what's going to inspire him in his work, because it's not going to be the writing, it's not necessarily going to be the reading for him. That's something that he really struggles with at times. And so the project that he's working on right now, he has been coming home to tell me, I read another chapter about Jane Goodall. This is what I learned. He's excited about it. So when you talk about mastering content, how I've seen that work is that the children are given the time. This isn't an overnight project where, they've been given, okay, we're going to do a biography project and you're going to have a week to do it and you're going to work on it from home. And then I think a lot of times that turns into which parents can help come up with the flashiest poster board project, and then it's done and over with. But with my son, he's been asked to work on it only at school. And so he is coming home every day and telling me what he's worked on. Well, I did another set of facts about Jane. Well, what did you learn? And so he's really sharing that with me. So it's the time that they're given to really, truly master the content. He's reading about Jane, he's writing about her, and his favorite part, of course, is that he gets to create something that exemplifies her life's work. And so when he came home with a list of choices of things that he could do to exemplify his biography project, the list was a page long. He could paint, he could draw, he could use clay, he could use technology. The list went on, and so that's the other piece that for learners like my son, it's giving them that flexibility and the choices that he could look at that list and say, I'm going to do a diorama of her in the forest with her monkeys, with her Jeep. He is so excited about this. So this is a kid that when he started kindergarten, cried every morning, begged me not to send him to school, begged me to homeschool him. And at 3rd grade, I can honestly say he is a confident learner. He's coming home saying things that I never thought I'd hear him say, which is things like, Mom, I did something I'm really proud of today. So, I may not know all the mechanics of PACE, but I know how it's affecting my kids and how they're succeeding. And I'm so grateful and have been so impressed by the school. And, I'm one of their #1 fans. So thank you for your time today, and thanks for allowing me to share.
It's great to get that frontline feedback. So thank you all as well.
Thank you for giving us
Appreciate
the
your
time.
Thank you.
All right, Bonnie Dunham's next on my list. I just wanted to also, you should have on your desk, Bonnie wrote me a really beautiful email about the process, and I really appreciated getting that. I don't know if you want to summarize that, but it is, I asked Angela to put that on the
Don't vote now.
As a parent of a young man who experiences complex disabilities, including intellectual and developmental disabilities, I know firsthand the benefits that all students have of having a diverse student body and how that benefits all students and the overall school community. Over the years, I heard from many teachers, students, and their parents about how having Sean in their children's classrooms enriched the other students' educational experiences. I know what he got out of it, but it was nice to hear what everyone else got out of it. While, as research highlights, having no negative impact on the academic outcomes of his peers with and without disabilities. That's why later on today, when you discuss Senate Bill 193, I hope that you take the position that any program or school that participates in actually benefiting from a voucher program must have policies that prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability, race, religion, or any other relevant criteria. That they not require children with disabilities to relinquish their rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, as a prerequisite of participating, as some states have done, to a devastating impact on children with disabilities. That it be provide opportunities for all children, not just those children whose parents can afford to pay the difference between the voucher and the actual cost, that it include opportunities for transportation for inner city children who may want to participate in some place that is a little bit out in the suburbs. And because accountability is so important, I know how it frames and informs the discussion in our public school system. I also ask that you require that participants in that program have a way to measure student outcomes, the outcomes of students who are participating and benefiting from the vouchers, just like the public schools do. So that schools or programs that are not serving students well and having the data to support that can be excluded from further participation, while schools that are doing a good job, perhaps whatever they're doing can be shared with other schools so that we could all benefit from that. If we must divert our tax dollars to private schools, and honestly I would prefer that we not, personally, I would prefer that we have a way to do it that's responsive and respectful to the needs of all New Hampshire children and families, and not just an exclusive pool of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, as always, succinct and clear. Also, just to summarize Bonnie's earlier email, just with regard to children with disabilities, she appreciated the board's patience with the large number of speakers who came to provide public comment. Everyone was welcome to speak, and I believe based on your input and that of other board members, the concerns raised by the speakers were heard by the board. So thank you for that comment, and thank you for your email. Next, we have Pam, who's a parent and also on the Concord School Board.
Seat's already pulled out, so I'm Good morning. My name is Pam Wicks. I am the mother to 3 boys who attend the public schools here in Concord, and I currently serve on the school board. However, for the purpose of this public comment, I will be wearing my mom hat. I first heard about PACE at a backyard barbecue at my friend Brian's house. He is the principal at Sanborn Regional High School, and we chat often about the exciting work he's doing there. At the time, my oldest was heading into 3rd grade and would be participating in his first year of standardized assessments. After listening to Brian explain PACE to me, I remember thinking how great it would be if Concord could get in on that action. No one likes the idea of standardized testing, but as a necessary tool for accountability, it has to be done. So if it has to be done, then wouldn't it be great to be in a school district that used an assessment that tested based on actual learning that goes on in the schools, and not what some bureaucrat in the stuffy corporate office thought my kids should know. I bet you can imagine my excitement when last year I read in the school district newsletter that Concord was going to be joining the pilot program. I want to share with you a story about why I believe in PACE and why I believe that this is the direction that we should be moving in for all school districts across the state. Last May, my son, a 4th grader at the time, came home from school, burst through the door, "Mom, I need a pizza box, duct tape, some aluminum foil. It's for my science test. We're going to be building a solar cooker, and I need to practice." Now, I have recently attended the PTA meeting where the school principal had talked about the upcoming PACE assessments, so I knew when he said science test that he actually meant his PACE assessment. The fact that he didn't even realize this solar cooker was a statewide assessment is not only a testament to the school for not making a big deal about the testing, but a testament to PACE itself. He wasn't just sitting in front of a computer for 2 hours, plugging in answers to Monday questions. He was going to have to build something, using and applying what he had learned in his unit on energy. It was fun and hands-on, certainly more engaging than answering questions on a piece of paper. With PACE, there is an appreciation for what they are learning and the process of showing it. You do not see that with the old Smarter Balanced assessments. With the PACE assessment, students have to solve a problem, come up with a plan, and execute that plan, and then defend what they did. On the day of the assessment, my son went to school ready and excited. He was not stressed out. He was not worried. He was not filled with a sense of dread. Instead, he was eager to get to work. He came home each day bursting with pride over the work that he was doing. He could not stop talking about this solar cooker. At dinner, he discussed with us some of the materials he was choosing, what he thought was going to work, and mistakes he had to fix after realizing his plan had a flaw. He spoke with a confidence that I had not seen in him before. He was proud of the work and himself. Let me remind you that this is in reference to a standardized test. He wasn't filling in bubbles. He was generating a hypothesis, creating a test, and then modifying his work to make it better. Doing science. How many kids do you know come home this excited and engaged in regards to Smarter Balanced or PART testing? We hear all the time that we need to stop teaching to the test and that standardized testing is holding teachers back from their potential to teach in an engaging way. Well, I believe that PACE is how we change that. PACE puts teachers in the driver's seat. They are implementing and creating the engaging curriculum and assessments, collaborating with teachers across the state, and making a test to get the kids to demonstrate what they are teaching. Isn't that what we want from our public school educators? The assessment and rubrics are clear and align with the actual learning that goes on in the classroom. Teachers and students will know exactly where their strengths are and where they need work. As a parent and a school board member, I know that is what I want to see. There is a positive change happening in our classrooms. We're seeing students engaged in meaningful learning, giving all students a greater opportunity to reach their potential. I believe that PACE, along with competency-based education, will help our students gain 21st century skills that will guide them on their path to life after high school. Thank you for your time and your opportunity to share my story and my experience with PACE. This is my son's proud project, so just wanted to share that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, for your view from the streets, grassroots, and you as well as thank you for your service to the Concord School
Thank
Board.
you. My
Doris
pleasure.
from Nashua?
Good morning, Chairman Raphael, members of the board, thank you for letting me speak. I want to talk about kindergarten. We're going through this all-day kindergarten transition, so we're looking at it. And I found this on the website of the department, which I'll have to share with you, Lee, from 2012. And it says every school district in New Hampshire is required to offer a minimum of half-day program. I don't know that that's true, because when I look at statutes 189-25, it says in the elementary school may include a kindergarten program. So I'm trying to figure out, and I think there should be some clarity, whether it's required or not. I know we have it, I know we're going to the next step, but the bill that they mentioned on your website referred me back to 2008. There was a bill, Senate Bill 530, where it required districts to submit a kindergarten implementation plan to the commissioner, detailing the plan to provide public kindergarten no later than beginning the following year. It doesn't say to implement, it says to submit a plan, because if they said to implement, that would be an unfunded mandate. So it's a rather tricky bill that went through legislation, but I think somebody needs to look at it, because I don't think it's required, so I will review all of this. Second thing is, we are reviewing the standards because we got rid of the testing. We do I-ready testing in grades 1 to 8, and they were going to put them back in kindergarten. Our board voted that out. Primarily because we were told by kindergarten teachers that the students cry over those tests. So that's gone, that test is gone. But why do they cry? Are the standards developmentally appropriate or not? Seems to me that they're not. But if we revise them, we can get rid of Common Core, which we as a district accepted thinking it was a mandate. Since then, we've discovered that it's not. But if we can get rid of it, which we're ready to revise it, and I'm so thankful that this board is revising it, how do we meet or exceed those standards and do any meaningful change? Because from what I've seen, what I experienced in first grade is now slid down into kindergarten. They're requiring them to learn how to read, to do math, instead of identify their numbers and maybe do some sounds, to play, to sing, to be active. So I can't meet or exceed grade 1 curriculum if I'm in kindergarten and still meet the state standards. So I'm really puzzled and disturbed, because I think getting kids to cry over assessments borders on child abuse. That's it for kindergarten. I have one other thing that I'd like to mention is you have that plan to revise them. You have a lot of different people that are included. You have a HEAC member, Home Education Advisory Council. Homeschoolers are not required to do state standards or state assessments. Most of them do portfolios. They stay far away. We even have a list of textbooks, non-Common Core textbooks, to make sure we have that choice. So I would hope that you put another public school parent, or if you can't do that, a charter school parent who has to take assessments. Because there's so many people in the trenches that are experiencing that. I don't see why you'd pull in a homeschooler that has really no skin in the game. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. And on the kindergarten, the website thing, I know the commissioner and I chat a lot. He's very fastidious about importing I'll take a look at that, so Frank will take a look at that.
Thank you. Donna from the Concord School District?
Hi, I'm Donna Pally. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here in the Concord School District, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I've written my remarks down, so I'll stay within those 5 minutes.
All right.
All right, I'm here to talk about PACE today. Not quite 2 years ago, we decided to make application to be a Tier 1 district with the PACE project. We knew it would be a lot of work, but we also knew it was going to be the right work, the work we wanted to do. That is, we wanted to be a system that understood clearly what our targets were, what we wanted all of our students to know, understand, and do to make them college and career ready. And we wanted meaningful assessments embedded in the teaching and learning process. And we want all students to bring their voices to just right and just-in-time instruction. We thought 2 years ago that being part of the PACE project would help our district move in this direction, and we were right. You probably know that this project has gained national attention. I saw it firsthand at meetings last year in Maryland, and Los Angeles, and Chicago, where state and local educators, leaders, higher ed partners, and renowned educators, renowned educational researchers and writers were seeking information about our work. I saw it firsthand when visitors from around the country came to our school district to hear from our teachers, and more importantly, directly from our students about their experiences with PACE. You may also know that this work has gained interest from around the state, and I've seen that firsthand when folks from around New Hampshire have called us and come to visit us in Concord to see what the work looks like on the ground. They wonder about what it will mean to involve their own districts in the work, and they're making careful and thoughtful decisions based on the research they're doing, just as we did. And despite all these wonderful opportunities for sharing, know that this is not a situation where people are sitting and patting themselves on the back or being patted on the back. The PACE leads, the DOE leads, and the technical advisors all spend hours wondering, poring over data, and questioning the work. I've never been involved with an endeavor. I've been in education for almost 40 years, with 32 in the Concord School District. I've never been involved with an endeavor that has been quite so reflective, quite so bent on getting it right, and quite so nimble. When we think about state accountability assessment programs, the word nimble might not in fact occur to you. I've seen, though, in just 18 months, the ability of this work to respond and evolve to achieve the project's goals, but do it in a collaborative and thoughtful way. We recently participated in a formative evaluation of our work, and it was extensive and thorough, providing each district and the project as a whole with clear and unbiased feedback. When evaluators from Humro came to Concord, I had a chance to provide very specific information, feedback, and reflection, and they met with our students, our teachers, and our parents, who were provided with opportunities to answer questions completely and candidly about the work. The surveys that staff were asked to complete were well-crafted and thorough, and just like with any good formative assessment, the results will help drive our next series of decisions and refinements. The results were strongly positive, with plenty of room to continue the growth we've seen in a short time. What is it about the work that's so different from other approaches, and what's the reason it's so responsive? Because it's a bottoms-up approach. It's been taken up and run by educators who have their eyes on their targets, what we call standards and competencies, and they especially have their eyes on their students. They want to know what all teachers want to know. Have I been successful in helping all my students develop the targeted knowledge, skills, and understanding? And can they actually apply what they've learned in really authentic and engaging ways? And number 2, can I actually use the information to continue to move my students forward? And the answer to the questions for teachers who are working with PACE is yes and yes. And they're dogged about doing it right, and they appreciate that they have timely expert advice from people like Scott Marion and Sue Lyons and Jerry Thompson at the Center for Assessment to guide them on what is a pretty new endeavor. I can try to explain to teachers by taking a summative assessment like NECAP or Smarter Balance or any large-scale published assessment is a good idea. Some teachers will agree, others are skeptical, but it's a whole lot different for teachers to show their colleagues why PACE makes sense. You only have to look at the student work to get it. You watch a group of teachers sitting around a table, looking one after the other at their students' work together with colleagues, and you'll see some very satisfied teachers. You listen to students talk about their learning, and you'll hear some impressive student voices. Is it easier to walk your students down to the computer lab or sharpen up your pencils and give them a packet of test pages and have them spend some hours with some of the tests? Yes, for sure. Is PACE hard work? Is it time consuming? Yes to both. But the vast majority are saying it's worth it And in this day and age, vast majorities agreeing on anything seems pretty miraculous. Teaching is hard work and time consuming whether you're doing PACE or not. With PACE, we're getting real results that make a difference. And remember, this is after 18 months for us in Concord. I'm convinced because I've seen it in this second year, especially in the last months. The work is moving quicker, we're learning all the time from what we're doing, and the improvements in instruction are happening. We're very early on to talk about impact, but I can see it already. I see it when parents tell me that their students are still talking a year later about the solar cooker. I mean, we didn't talk about that, but they had to engineer. I see it when groups of teachers are sitting around a table engaged in in-depth conversations about their students' work and bringing it back to the classroom. I see it when I look into a classroom where really quality performance assessments are going on, and I know that a percentage of students in those classrooms have learning struggles. And I know that some of those students have behavioral issues. And I know that not all those students have developed fluency in English. But you wouldn't know it by watching them because they're all engaged and working hard. We have about 40 of our educators in Concord who've already stepped up to be part of the task groups, and they've done a lot of heavy lifting for their colleagues in the first years, work that's already getting easier. They bring the work to their schools, to their grade levels and departments, and they say this is some of the most profound professional development they've ever experienced. So in Concord, we're looking forward to continuing this work, taking a careful and planful approach as we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anne Marie Cornerstone?
So I'm looking at PACE through with a critical eye. And I went through the presentation on PACE from the prior meeting and the materials. And I just basically put something very informal together that I will email you so that you have this accessible. Because I have concerns and I have questions, and I think that they need to be addressed and they need to be answered if we're going to continue down this path. State law says that standardized tests must be objectively scored. One of the biggest complaints I hear from parents is that competencies are subjectively graded. There was a Deerfield school board meeting last night where several parents showed up and very angry about the subjective grading. That board meeting was videotaped. At some point it'll be uploaded. I think you'll be able to see the comments then. So I went through the materials and I bolded what the material said and then my comments after that. So when you go through it, you'll be able to understand my comments better. So it says the common tasks must be administered in a standardized manner during the operational year to achieve comparability. After the pilot and operational years, these common tasks are available in a growing bank of tasks from which teachers can select to use local tasks. My question is, doesn't that negate the idea that this is a local test when the questions are coming from a test bank? And while PACE requires more testing time than the Smarter Balance because it is so integrated into the curriculum, students often do not realize that they are taking a test. So my question is if students do not realize they're taking a test, how do they prepare? Many students want to give extra attention to testing when they study, and so do extra studying. And it also highlights that there's actually more testing with PACE than a Smart Balance test, which I think the Smart Balance test is way too much anyway. How do parents refuse PACE assessments if it's embedded and requires more testing time? I don't know if we've ever gotten that answer. Because right now, parents are pulling their kids out of the Smarter Balance because of it's so cumbersome. The material says if we believe that all students must be college and career ready, then our system must advance students as they demonstrate mastery of knowledge and skills and work study practices. So my question is, where is it defined what it means to be college and career ready? And I thought that we had Common Core, and if schools followed Common Core standards, they were college and career ready. Now we're being told that we need competencies. Then they tell us that competencies are local, but we have state competencies. How do we know these competencies are going to make kids college and career ready? Where is the proof? The term mastery is used a lot, but I think for me and for most parents, we assume mastery means the academic content. If the competency doesn't cover all of the content, then that should be taught. Then you are giving the false impression to parents that their child is competent in the subject matter. A few years ago, I asked Professor Stephen Wilson, a mathematician from Johns Hopkins, to look at the Algebra 1 competencies in several districts in New Hampshire. And I posted that on a patch blog that is embedded in here. And his comments were highly critical, especially of Rochester, Litchfield, and even what the New Hampshire Department of Education had on its website. Only positive comments about these about Bedford. But the DOE didn't get it right. Neither did several of the other districts. So if the student passed those competencies, they weren't competent in Algebra 1. Knowing that some of the competencies involve non-academic skills or social and emotional competencies, what are they really mastering? Behavior modification? That's not objective, and that should require informed written consent from parents. That's required of mental health professionals in a private practice due to HIPAA laws, and the APA Code of Ethics. The final evaluation report, again from the materials, describes that various data collection activities and summarizes the evidence for each goal and its underlying claims, assumptions, thereby creating validity argument for the PACE pilot program. Creating validity? Is PACE valid or is it not? Are PACE assessments being administered violating state statute if they are not validated properly? Where are the empirical studies demonstrating the test had predictive capability? What kind of data is being collected, especially on non-academic behavior and dispositions? How have parents been informed that social and emotional testing is going on? Were parents required to give written consent to this? If this was done by a licensed mental health professional outside the school, written consent would be required due to the HIPAA laws. Any type of psychological assessment requires informed written consent. If my child was given a psychological evaluation in the form of a standardized assessment, I'd be talking to an attorney. There's a great deal of teacher training. Who's paying for that? Kentucky abandoned performance testing years ago, and I embed an article about why, and they go on to say that that they found inaccurate scoring, high expense, slow results turnaround, and outright failures were rampant. PACE tasks require deep knowledge on the part of the students. There's no chance of getting the answer correct by guessing. But according to Professor Wilson, much of the content is missing from Algebra 1 competencies. In other words, if the task requires a student to know 5 times 5 equals 25 while they are doing the test, they may pass. However, if they are never required to know the multiplication tables in that task, because that's not part of the competency, then it gives everybody the false impression that the student has mastered the core content. When I sat in on the listening session in Pinkerton on the Next Generation Science Standards, the message was clear. We don't want kids to regurgitate facts anymore. I heard that over and over again. So there's no need to know facts and information because that's literacy. As a math tutor, the kids who know their math facts are at a clear advantage than those who do not. High school math teachers and mathematicians teaching at the college level that I work with would agree. So there is another section that says the second principal claim from the theory of action is participating districts collaborate with one another. This claim is supported in a number of ways. Has anybody put a price tag on what this costs the local district? How much time away from the classroom are these teachers taking? Are more substitutes needed? The majority of students report that they would rather take the PACE assessment than the Smarter Balance. Well, sure. So in my opinion, no one, including teachers, want anything to do with the Smarter Balance assessment. We have validity questions on the Smarter Balance also. Smarter Balance is not a good alternative. The teachers in Nashua described the assessment as being a psychological evaluation tool. So we're seeing a pattern here of psychological evaluations. When the students who indicated, this is again from your materials, when the students who indicated they would rather take mostly a multiple choice assessment were asked why, they typically responded that they are having some chance of getting the answer correct, even if they didn't know the content very well. Well, there is no assurance that PACE will show us that all the content would be mastered. In other words, we know that Common Core math standards do not teach prime factorization, and consequently, it does not teach least common denominators and greatest common factors. So how do we know, again, that all of the content is being mastered if you're passing the competencies?
Hey, Maria,
Am I-
8 minutes.
Am I at you next? Okay, I do not want to overstay my welcome on that. I will email the rest to you. I would ask that you go through the rest. It's not too much longer, but I think it's valuable reading.
Great, so I appreciate your feedback, and please definitely send it with all the links. Very much appreciate it.
That was it for the list. Is there anybody else? Okay, we'll move. That's actually quite timely. Our next topic is on case, and Carl. But I do want to mention, you noticed that we have a different videographer today, Peter, the woman person who had a snowblower accident. So wish him well with snowstorm. He's working it through. So thank you for substituting in. So Paul and Carla, and I don't know if the obviously we've heard a lot of positive feedback, and then Marie had some questions. I'm not sure if there was a presentation, maybe you'll answer some of those. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, last month you heard from Sonny Becker from Hummerall, and you heard from Susan Lyons of the Center for Assessment regarding a national review of case and second year data from case. And one of the questions that has come up has been the impact on disaggregated groups of students within PACE, and as we all know, it's early, so being able to provide a full review of data hasn't really emerged as of yet. But today, we have Carla Evans here. Carla is a doctoral student from UNH who has also interned with the Center for Assessment. And part of Carla's dissertation for doctoral studies has been a review of student data, including student data regarding subgroups from PACE. And it has just started to come out, and I thought it was very timely. It would be a good presentation for the board to take a look at. So, Carl?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So I'll give you just a general overview of my dissertation and topic, and then get right into it. So my dissertation investigates the effects of the PACE pilot using smarter balanced data over the first 2 years of the pilot. So 2014-15 school year, and then last year, the 15-16 school year. And my dissertation focuses on 8th grade, ELA, and math. That I was asked to delimit it to that for my dissertation. Today, I'm gonna present the math because it's all that I have totally done. So you really did catch me midstream here. And but after my dissertation is done, I do have the data to look at 4th grade and 11th grade SAT data, and we'll do that. And if you want to invite me back, I'll present that as well. So my research questions. One is just the overarching research question, right? What effect is PACE pilot, what is it having on 8th grade student achievement outcomes? We don't know at this point, right? It's early in the pilot. No one has really looked at this from a quantitative standpoint. And so one of the things I wanted to do was compare PACE students to demographically similar students. So instead of comparing, right, apples to oranges, say if they're about the same prior achievement and other things, and I'll talk in a minute about how I did that, how did PACE treatment affect them? So my first sub-question is, what is the average effect on 8th grade math achievement? And then, as Paul said, I looked at it by differential effects. So does that average effect vary according to certain student level characteristics? So if they have an IEP plan, if they are male or female, if they are qualified for free and reduced lunch, all of those categories. And then I also looked at how those average effects vary among PACE schools, but I'm not presenting that today just because of time. And it's not any different than the other findings, right? Because that's at the school level. In terms of study design, so I used the whole population of 8th grade students in New Hampshire. So the only requirements for inclusion were that they had to have prior achievement test results, which I used their 6th grade kneecap, because that was the only thing they had in common. And also that they had to have student background and demographic characteristics. So that's about 22,000 students. Again, this is not longitudinal. So these are 2 cohorts of 8th grade students. 8th graders in 2014-15, 8th graders in 15-16. So just to keep that in mind, because we don't have enough years yet to look at it longitudinally. as probably many of you know in this room, the gold standard for research across the board is that you randomly select people from a population, and then you say, okay, you get treatment, you get control. You get treatment, you get control. Obviously, that's not something that happens a lot in educational research because we don't like to use kids as guinea pigs. And in the PACE districts, they self-selected into PACE, right? So they might be systematically different than their non-PACE counterparts. And so one of the things that we do as educational researchers, or a tool we can use, is something called propensity score methods. So it's a way to account for pre-existing differences between treatment and comparison. So to make them equivalent as much as you can before I analyze the data, even though I wasn't able to say, oh, you get treatment and you don't. And I'm not going to go, I doubt you want to hear all the details of that. If you do, you can ask me after. But just to show you what this looks like in my analytic sample, so you get the picture of it. You see here the student characteristics on the left. So there's the non-PACE group and the PACE group here. So if you look at student characteristics, I have what's called balanced the sample, so that there's 51% male, 51% male. 13% IEP, 13% IEP. Free and reduced lunch, 23, so it's totally balanced on student characteristics. On school characteristics, I wasn't able to balance it. It's just how propensity score weighting works. You can't do both. And my analysis is about students, not schools first. So the school characteristics are not as balanced, but what you'll notice, I put the PACE in red, because in any way you could estimate it, right? The percentage of free and reduced lunch at PACE schools in this sample is about 34% compared to 23% in the non-PACE. So in any way you estimate it, this would underestimate the effect of PACE rather than overestimate it, which I think is important because that's, as an educational researcher, you want to make sure you're underestimating something and not overestimating something. So these are the initial findings for the first sub-question about the average effect. So just to give you some orientation about this bar graph here. On the left-hand side, the vertical axis are the Smarter Balance scale scores, and then along the horizontal are the years of the pilot, so 14, 15, 15, 16. The red bars are non-PACE students, and then the gray bars are PACE, depending on whether they've had 1 year of treatment, which is the light gray, and then darker gray is if they've had 2 years of treatment. So I want to make a couple points here. One, you can see that in the first year, there's low performance for the PACE treatment. You could call that an implementation dip. One thing to note here is that PACE wasn't officially approved until March of 2015, so that's like 2/3 of the way through the school year. So, this doesn't tell us exactly what's going on there, except that they perform lower in the first year of treatment. And that's the 3 schools that PACE treatment is the 3 schools who are implementing, because Souhegan doesn't implement in 8th grade. They only do high school. So that's 3 schools the 14-15 school year. And then secondly, you'll notice that there's been positive effects in the second year of the pilot. So for both students who are just starting out in PACE, so part of the cohort 2 of PACE, if you will, as well as for those districts that are still a part of the PACE. And again, I'll take questions at the end, but I do want to get on to some of the differential effects I found by student characteristics. So one of the most striking was this bar graph here represents average IEP students in New Hampshire on the left, and then the average non-IEP student. And what you'll notice is that for IEP students in New Hampshire, there is a very substantial positive effect of PACE in the second year. There was an interaction between disability status and treatment, such that there was a positive effect in the second year, a pretty significant effect. And then secondly, to draw your eye across the panels, you'll notice that for PACE treatment in the second year or in the first year, that they tended to perform, IEP students tended to perform around the same, whether they, sorry, let me say it again. Students who had IEPs performed around the same as non-IEP students, which is a really striking finding that, whether it's the first year here or the second year here, that IEP students and non-IEP students in PACE schools are performing around the same on average, right? This is on average. And the same is not true of non-PACE IEP students. You see the gap, you see the achievement gap. So here, IEP students lower than their non-IEP counterparts, lower than their non-IEP counterparts, which is typically what we see with an achievement gap for these effects by disability. These are the results by gender. I just want to highlight two things here. First is that female students, which are the average female student here, and here's the male, they are outperforming their male counterparts in every year and treatment status. And that's something that was true of these cohorts when they were in 6th grade. That female students in New Hampshire, for these two groups of students, have, in mathematics, have outperformed whether they're in PACE treatment or not. So that's one finding. A second finding is that there really is no effect of PACE on male students. So they're performing around the same as their non-PACE male counterparts. They're not performing worse, they're not performing better. They're expected or estimated to perform about the same. So in conclusion, findings from this study provide preliminary evidence, right? This is preliminary. I haven't been able to look at all the grades and subjects, that the PACE pilot is having a positive effect on 8th grade student achievement outcomes in math, starting in the 2nd year. And findings also suggest that students with disabilities that attend PACE schools tend to exhibit substantially higher achievement in comparison to students with disabilities in the non-PACE comparison group. In fact, as I said, right, students receiving PACE treatment are estimated to perform around the same whether they have an IEP or not. And what I'd like to do is really drill down into that and look at, what is driving those effects in PACE schools. Is it particular schools? Is it particular influential cases? But, a good dissertation is a done dissertation, so I'm trying to do that first. Findings could be used to provide assurance to key stakeholders that PACE students are provided an equitable opportunity to learn, especially findings related to effects by disability status and gender. And I could talk more about, sort of expected findings of treatment and how these really we're not seeing negative effects that sometimes you see in the first couple years of a major reform initiative in other contexts related to performance assessment programs or competency-based ed. And then lastly, importantly, the focus of PACE is on performance assessments used throughout the year. We've heard that this morning. And this study provides initial evidence that the learning gains that might be happening as a result of these performance assessments in classrooms, which are more cognitively complex. They take up class time, but they're also used by teachers then within the context of instruction, that those learning gains may be carrying over to how students are performing on the state standardized test. This is very initial, right? This is one piece of evidence, but we might be seeing the initial grounds for some sort of transfer that's happening, which is the intent and the theory behind performance assessments. So thank you.
Okay, so we have time for questions from board members.
I've got a question.
Yep. Just want to say one other thing, and that is, you remember I've asked this be a standing item for every board meeting. I know that obviously the public is interested, so there'll be other opportunities to also answer some of Anne Marie's questions. So with that, keep that in mind. There'll be more opportunities. Bill?
Carla, this looks breathtaking. I mean, this looks like a very big deal. And I'm just asking you in order to say, no, it's not that big a deal. But equity is at the heart of, on the one hand, the rationale to do competency-based education, and on the other hand, I think as Paul said, the questions people have. So correct me, like you say it's preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
And is it preliminary in any way that could lead to the need for revision of these results later?
Yeah, good question.
Because you just don't see
Right.
this kind of results
from
Right.
Education Commission.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So these results are not preliminary and, that somehow, I'm gonna go back and redo this analysis and there's gonna be different numbers. I mean preliminary because I think it's helpful to look at other grades and subject areas, including 8th grade ELA, and looking at 4th grade math and looking at SATs, even though what are SATs aligned to and what, but to look at that as a fuller picture, because this is how 8th grade math students performed. This isn't gonna change, and that's significant in its own right, but that's one piece of a larger picture that I think of as an educational researcher. So I think these are stunning findings. I think what's unique is that I was unable to locate any studies related to performance assessments, competency-based ed, personalized learning, blended learning, and I even talked to some people who specialize in disabilities. Where have we seen research that has actually disaggregated their findings, looked at differential interaction effects by disability status? I haven't been able to locate it. They haven't been able to locate it. So I think part of it is sometimes as a researcher, you're handed data that might be at a district level or state level. It's aggregated in some way, and so you can't do some of these analyses that I was able to do because I was able to get it at the student level. And I think other times researchers aren't interested in looking at it by differential effects. So I think what's unique about this is I haven't been able to locate any research that's looked at it this way, and so it's hard to put that in a context, except to say these are substantial gains for IEP students.
I've got more.
Yeah.
I just want to, compliment you on the technical precision and the clarity of this. It's hard, this is complicated stuff,
Right.
the matching
Yeah.
and so on. And you seldom see research with this kind of findings, this kind of technical approach that yields this kind of mind-blowing result. Are you in close touch day to day, I imagine, with the, I noticed Bonnie has left. I want Bonnie Dunham and others to be sure they digest this for the special education community in
Yeah.
the state needs to know about it.
Yeah, have them contact me. I don't know them today. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I just want to drill down a little bit on the IEP information as well, because we often hear anecdotally at least that it's the IEP students who don't perform well in the traditional classroom learning setting. So would it be fair to say that this is an indication that this alternative method of acquiring and mastering content maybe is clicking with that IEP population?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's suggesting that, right? That these effects, definitely they're not causal, right? We can't, there's lots of other things going on in districts, but these positive effects for IEP students, there's definitely something going on there because they're so substantial. So there's what that is, I don't know, right? Quantitative research tells you the 10,000 foot and you say, oh wow, there's really significant effects going on here. Now, let's drill down and find out why. What is it about PACE? And I think from reading the final report, which I also glanced at before this meeting, I think teachers and students were commenting on that a little bit too. But yeah, definitely more research needed there.
Two comments and questions. What you were just talking about, when Frank was talking about the IEP, I was remembering what the parents said. And, sometimes, I know the whole theory behind PACE and income cores, what can you do with what you know?
Right.
Not just regurgitating facts, but what can you do with those facts? Of course, you need the facts first. And I was thinking the choices that were given to the student on his project on Jane Goodall's, that in a way, every student learns differently, and many IEP students, they are just different learners. And so it sounds like that would enable them to have their differences met and appreciated and move forward. And so maybe that's where some of the gains have come from, that diversity of ways of showing how much you know and how you can do. My other question, did you look at, as you were doing the research, did you look at the tests themselves or just the results?
Just the results. So I'm not doing the validity study on Smarter Balance. There are validity studies on Smarter Balance, and you should read them, but yeah.
No, what I mean as far as, I know Anne Marie had concerns with what's called psychological things and how those were being tested and HIPAA and all that type of thing. And I didn't know, in looking at, and maybe talk to some of the other people that are administering these.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that we talk about, you know, because I'm on a local board too,
Right.
we talk about self-management, being managing your
Right,
time,
right.
working with others, you know, cooperation.
Right.
These are the things that I think she was looking at as psychological. But it seems like within working with projects, if you're working in a group, I mean, the teacher is not filling in bubbles or doing this, but they're saying, yes, they worked well with the group, yes, they turned it in on time.
Right.
And I don't think, you know, I was just curious.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely not
There
a
was
smarter balance.
specific questions on pace even, you know, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the PACE, so the PACE Common Task, this is research with Smarter Balance. The PACE Common Task, as far as I understand it, you know, is a performance assessment. So what is on the rubric for the content of the performance assessment is not psychological, it's not work study practices. I mean, they have that aspect of it, like are they able to work well with others and all those other things, but the main parts of the rubric are content driven. But this research, and I think one of the things you highlighted is, you know, it is like my final point, they're suggesting that if there are gains happening from students working on performance assessments, perhaps benefiting IEP students, that we're seeing that transfer over to a very different assessment. Smarter Balanced is very different, right, than the PACE Common Tasks. So we're seeing that there's learning gains being transferred over and shown potentially on a very different assessment, particularly for students with disabilities, but across the board, because these are also, that first slide was the average effect, right, not just for students with disabilities, but all those PACE students.
Okay, so our commitment, we're going to have this as a standing agenda item, so I know there are other questions. I'm sorry. Okay, real quick, but, and then also bring in Carla, you know, into the department to help us not go risking your doctoral defending it. But in any event, so we're committed, this is a standing agenda item. Obviously, there's been a lot of positive, exciting news, but there's also, you know, some questions. So one more question for this go around.
Thank you, I appreciate your presentation, it was really clear and I understood it. Except I have one, is the term treatment a term of art?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
yes.
I
Sounds
think
very,
treatment
yes.
and it sounds like doctors,
Right.
it's not,
Yes.
it's a term of art in.
It's a term in research, so when you
Okay.
talk about like treatment, right, and then control or treatment and comparison,
Okay,
so that's why I use that. But it's basically like,
Fine.
are they PACE or are they non-PACE?
that's what I thought.
But I think of it
just
as
wanted-
treatment and comparison,
Got it.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
what I wanted to be clear
Yeah,
on, thank you.
yeah, thank you, yeah.
Nomenclature, thanks for that clarification, Carla.
Yeah.
Okay, a less exciting but important topic. We were talking about the school hours and kind of led to the high school seniors. I know the commissioner and Amy would like to get you an update on that.
So, I think last time we were here, we were asking about, we got the authority for the waiver request, for snow days. I just wanted to give you an update on the snow days. We still haven't had to issue any waivers on the snow days, so that's good. We have issued 2 waivers on high school, moving up that high school graduation date to more than 5 days. One for Dover High School and one for Monadnock Regional High School. So those are waivers that we issued, and they all, what I do want to mention about those 2 waivers is the high school seniors are still meeting all the equivalent hours. I think that's key to note, that we actually didn't waive any hours beyond what the requirement is. I guess that's about it. Less exciting, for sure.
Less exciting. Any motions needed?
I just say we need to thank the weather gods for that last storm coming on Saturday.
Keep in mind a longer term goal. Remember, if we are hearing, you know, the PACE and competency based and things like that, there's still obviously a number of hours in statute, and that's something we can address on a long-term basis. So before we move off open board, I know Ann in the conversation had a process question with regard to our website and how we can perhaps be used even more effectively to, you know, communicate information. And why don't you raise a question that we talked about, and maybe Paul and Frank have an answer already, but
After listening to public comment at our last meeting, it struck me that there were concerns and issues being raised that perhaps there could be more collaboration made for the benefit of the general public to understand topics that sometimes can be confusing. One being the core standards, what they are, and in fact they're not curriculum, they're a set of standards. So I thought if there were outstanding or repetitive concerns that came up at public comment, perhaps on our district website, there could be a communication corner or public information section that would give more information, elaborate on, or give distinctions to some topics that are concerned with the community.
So I think that's a great idea. And I can tell you that even in the budgeting process, we have asked that we can facilitate an update of our website, because our website actually includes a tremendous amount of content, but it's not always that accessible. It's basically just all these hyperlinks all over the place. So we will be going through and updating that, but in the meantime, we can try and make sure that as we get kind of repeat types of content questions, to make sure that we highlight those in a way that people can easily access them. And even though we may have the information on the website, they can't find it, but we can make it easy for them to access that. So I appreciate that feedback.
And there's so much that is for educators. So to call, we call parent portal and districts to call public portal. This is where there's some things that the public, they don't want to feel through all this kind of stuff, but it's just set up so they can click, click, click and find out which type of good ideas.
So you're onto something, and I was glad to hear what the Commissioner said, because that's been my impression. Everything actually is on the website, but it's like inside baseball. If you're a teacher, if you're into it, you can get at it, but for the general public, for parents, it's not really user-friendly.
It's not as accessible as it needs to be.
So thank you. Anything else from board members? Okay, now back to another, but this is really exciting. Lori's going to bring us Marion and Dennis, our U.S. Senate Youth Program delegates.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Edelwood. Good morning, board members. I want to thank you all firstly for inviting us to be here today. Unfortunately, Marion London couldn't make it. There we go. I'm Jen Rupert. I go to Worcester High School in New Hampshire. My name is John Brita. I'm a chemistry teacher and state executive city council director of the New Hampshire Association of Schools.
Good morning. So last month I got to introduce you to 4 amazing teachers, and this month I get to talk about 2 incredible high school students. Marion, as Denny said, is not going to be here, but Marion and Dennis represented New Hampshire at the 55th annual United States Senate Youth Program that was held in Washington, D.C., March 4th through 11th. In New Hampshire, each high school principal may nominate 1 junior or senior, selections based on academic accomplishments, community service, demonstrated qualities of leadership, and whether outspoken or soft-spoken, the type of student who thrives in Washington is one who is truly interested in government, history, politics, and who has demonstrated a desire to serve in a leadership capacity. This year's essay question was, what do you feel is a vital issue facing the United States today? Some of the responses we received were pollution, and not as it affects the ecosystem of the quality of life, civic engagement, racism, specifically being labeled a Muslim or Black Lives Matter, political polarization, educational divide, the drug addiction opioid crisis, mental illness, and minimum wage. It never ceases to amaze me how intelligent and in touch with the world these students are. I'm going to let John say a few words. John's been a member of the selection committee for the past 3 years.
I know it's always a difficult challenge for us, so we get many qualified applicants, and then we have to figure out who really, should we be selecting to attend this nomination. In doing so, I think one of the things we look for not only is strong leaders, strong academic character, but we look for people who we feel can grow from the experience. And that's the thing when we really get to see in the interview process is being able to talk to young individuals. And we want someone who's going to take away from the opportunity, not just someone who wants it to another check mark on their resume or their college application, but wants to grow, wants to gain from that experience. And I think we've done pretty well over the years doing that. I know I speak strongly from a leadership position with my role. I'm on it because of my involvement with the State Student Council Board. And I do think we've selected good leaders. I will I've got a minute, I'm going to take a minute to make a self-plug. Pinkerton Academy and the State Student Council, we're actually very proud to host the National Association of Student Councils National Conference in New Hampshire this year. I know it's the first time it's ever been in New Hampshire. I think it's the first time it's ever been in New England in 80 years. So we are very happy to be hosting that. Shameless plug.
How many students will be coming in?
About 1,000, 45 different states and countries.
So Marion sent me an email just to convey some of her feelings. She said, I am eternally grateful for the opportunity I was given. The people I met have truly changed my way of thinking and have inspired me in multiple ways. Washington Week was one of the best weeks of my life, and I hope to be able to share that experience with others, and not only speech, but through implementation of action. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving me the honor of representing the great state of New Hampshire.
All right, thank you. I don't know if you all received or have the agenda from Washington Week. I'd be happy to pass it around if you haven't.
Sure, pass it around.
Yeah. So, as you'll see in the agenda, so there's 104 student delegates from across the country, 2 from each state, 2 from the District of Columbia, and 2 from the Department of Defense Education Activity. So, 104 students. We had the opportunity to meet with some state, national, international leaders, including Chief Justice John Roberts, President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary of State Tillerson, and it's really a unique opportunity because it's a chance to meet with these leaders, candid, frank, most of them yielded to frank questions, and we got frank answers, mostly because there's no media there. So it's really these very, personal, kind of confidential conversations we have with them. Chief Justice Roberts yielded the questions. The Israeli ambassador to the U.S. spoke to us and he yielded the questions. And obviously there's some controversy going on right now with the Israeli-Palestine agreement and all that. So that's probably the most unique and interesting opportunities that that week provides. We also met with, we had a Senate reception, so senators from all of the states mostly showed up, and we had a chance to talk with them and meet with them and all that stuff. So that's the program basically in a nutshell. Again, you'll see the program or the agenda. But I think the most inspiring part of the week were the other delegates, because there's delegates coming from all over the country with all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, all different ideologies, values, views. But what was great about that is we, certainly we disagreed on a lot of things, but we had these great, enriching, educated conversations that just seems to be lacking today in politics. We disagreed, but there wasn't any name calling. We were willing to talk with people that we didn't agree with, and there wasn't this divide. We really were able to sit down and talk to each other, and not in a harsh way or anything. We just had some really great, open, honest conversations, and I think that, despite the polarization we see today, I think that there really is hope. And I think when politics is about us versus them, we all lose, and that was definitely that wasn't there during this week. It was all us, and all of these students came together because we all believe in America, we all believe in our government, and we're all there to make our government a better place, make our country a better place, even though we see different ways of getting there. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Boy, our political leaders could learn a lot from you. I'm really optimistic. So what was the most surprising thing that you learned?
I think the most I was really surprised on the student delegates and on their political views. Certainly I wasn't that exposed to other students' political views before going to that, because I only kind of see New England young people's views, which is obviously a lot different than the rest of the country. So definitely I was very interested, I was very surprised by the amount of diversity in political views that there were across the country.
That's good to hear. Other questions? Well, we congratulate you. You're awesome. I can see why you were selected. You represented us well. And we'll have to do our social media photo, and then we'll take a, you got it? And we'll take a 5-minute break until we can chat with Danny offline, and then Brandon can get set up.